with that, Ms. Taylor, well, actually, I think Ms. Renati, I think it was back to you, no?
Thank you, Chairman. This is Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director. The next report will be provided by the Board of Equalization's Chief Communications Officer, Peter Kim, who will provide a report on the Communications Department Implementation Act.
Thank you, Ms. Renati. Chairman Vasquez and honorable members, this is Peter Kim, Chief Communications Officer. Members, today I'll provide a brief report on the Communications Department's efforts in the implementation of Proposition 19. I'm continuing to closely collaborate with our taxpayers' rights advocate, Lisa Thompson, to explore additional ways in reaching out to taxpayers. Along with the rest of the executive management team, we are closely monitoring pending legislation so any significant changes can be shared with taxpayers. The Proposition 19 webpage is continually being updated and enhanced to provide the latest information in real time for taxpayers. Since last month, we've updated the webpage, such as the comparison charts and the frequently asked questions, to reflect that all provisions of Proposition 19 are now in effect. In addition, we have updated existing Propositions 60, 90, and 110 web pages by adding an important note and the direct link to the Proposition 19 webpage to inform taxpayers that provisions related to those propositions have also been impacted by Proposition 19. As of yesterday, we have received a total of approximately 143,076 unique external visits since November 10, 2020. Since last month's board meeting, that's an additional 25,773 unique external visits. Also on April 1st, we issued a news release on the expanded property tax benefits to seniors, the severely disabled, and victims of wildfires and natural disasters, to inform the media that those eligible can transfer their taxable value of their original residence to a replacement residence 3 times during their lifetime anywhere throughout the state. I'm pleased to report that the news release received considerable coverage. Finally, we are continuing to use our social media channels such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to expand our audience and direct followers to the BOE website for the latest updates. This concludes my report, and I am available to answer any questions the board may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fleming, I think it might be one of your staff persons maybe didn't mute their mic because I hear somebody typing away, and I don't think it's any of our members.
I agree, Chairman. Can I have all staff, please, make sure your camera's off and your mics are muted? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. We're ready to proceed.
Member Gaines, I see a hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair Vasquez. And I wanted to thank
I think you're muted. You're muted, Mr. Gaines.
Oh, I thought I clicked that. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Mr. Kim and all his efforts on the expansion of our website, and also this coordination with our LTAs. That I know that there was, and I don't know if it's been issued yet or not, but there's an LTA on Prop 19 that I think addresses, it was like 50 some odd questions and then answers. Those will be going to the county assessors, but I just think that's so helpful to be able to have that accessible on our website too, so that if we have constituents that might have a particular question, it could be answered in that kind of a different format, really, for an LTA that's answering a lot of questions. And I know that we've done that on the website, but this seems more expansive. This LTA seems a lot more expansive than the number of questions that we had on the website prior. So I just think that that's good communication with our constituents. And so wanted to thank the board for that, and that the communication going between LTAs and also for our website.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands or comments, I just had one quick one for Mr. Kim. I'm not sure if you mentioned this previously, but do you have any plans on creating a how-to webinar to help taxpayers understand how to use these exclusions? And if so, when will they be ready to preview?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. I can definitely collaborate with the taxpayers' rights advocate to assess if there is a need for a webinar. While the board and the board staff begin the rulemaking process and await possible implementation language, there still exists some ambiguities that may make it difficult to cover all questions at this time. But as a reminder, the resources we have now available on our Prop 19 webpage for taxpayers do include the PowerPoint presentation, the fact sheet, the comparison charts, the frequently asked questions, and of course the one-stop shop and all the guidance that the BOE has issued so far. So we can definitely look into that and circle back with you. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Seeing no other comments or questions, let me turn it back to Ms. Renati. I believe you have the 5th sub-item.
Thank you, Chairman Vasquez. The next report will be provided by Taxpayers' Rights Advocate, Ms. Lisa Thompson, who will provide a report on the implementation actions of the Taxpayers' Rights Advocate Office. Ms. Thompson?
Good morning, Chairman and honorable board members. My name is Lisa Thompson. I'm the agency's Taxpayer Rights Advocate, and I'm pleased to report on the Proposition 19 implementation and action plan for the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. At the March 2021 board meeting, I updated you about this item, indicating that once implementing legislation has been adopted for the provisions of Proposition 19, the TRA office will begin work on revising our existing information sheets affected by Proposition 19, and that because transfers of property will have occurred before the effective date of the various provisions of Proposition 19, we will need to maintain a lot of information on the content from the existing information sheets, but revise them such to indicate they are only effective with transfers through certain dates, and that Proposition 19 is in place for transfers after that date. We have worked with the communications officer, Peter Kim, to add notes to our website advising of Proposition 19 and to direct taxpayers to the extensive information about Proposition 19 on its dedicated webpage. At this time, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office is reviewing guidance and information published by our agency's Property Tax Department while awaiting the passage of implementing legislation for Proposition 19. And we are also monitoring the progress on property tax rules for the areas affected by Proposition 19 to ensure we are familiar with those provisions. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office will focus on 2 main areas for workload to complete. They are to review and update existing taxpayer information sheets and to create new information sheets. This is in addition to assisting taxpayers with any proposition issues. Our 4 information sheets published by the TRA office were affected by Proposition 19. Therefore, we will revise those information sheets for the following topics: the parent-child exclusion, grandparent-grandchild exclusion, base year value transfer for seniors, and base year value transfer for disabled persons. Projects for the new property tax rule for intergenerational transfers and base year value transfers were both initiated by the Property Tax Department, with proposed drafts issued in March, and you heard about one this morning for adoption. The TRA office is closely monitoring these property tax rules, and with key information from the rules and statute, we will begin revising the information sheets. With respect to the second item, creating new information sheets, the TRA office plans to draft a new information sheet addressing base year value transfers for disabled victims, for disaster victims provided for in Proposition 19. Additionally, we plan to draft new information sheets addressing intergenerational transfers that are specific to family farms. As will be discussed in my next update, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office continues to work with the Communications Officer on various aspects of Proposition 19 to ensure taxpayers are informed. In addition, as to new work, the TRA office plans to draft, as I said, the information sheet addressing base year value transfers for disaster victims. And once we revise our existing 4 information sheets, we will move on to that information sheet, as well as for the intergenerational transfers on specific family farms. The TRA office continues to work in collaboration with the Communications Officer on education and outreach items, which is the topic of the next agenda item. This concludes my update for the TRA office implementation plan, unless there are any questions.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions Ms. Thompson on this Taxpayers' Rights Advocate Office Prop 19 implementation? Seeing and hearing none. Ms. Renati, will you continue?
Thank you, Chairman. The final report will be provided by the Taxpayers' Rights Advocate, Ms. Lisa Thompson, who will provide a report on implementation actions regarding education and outreach. Ms. Thompson.
Good morning again. I'm Lisa Thompson, the agency's Taxpayer Rights Advocate, and I'm pleased to report on the Proposition 19 Implementation and Action Plan for Education and Outreach. The education and outreach implementation actions focus on 2 main areas of workload to complete. They are to create a Proposition 19 fact sheet, develop presentation materials, and assess the need for additional educational materials. We have completed some work on this already, and work has been completed in the area of taxpayer education for Proposition 19 in general. In collaboration with Peter Kim, the Communications Officer, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate created a Proposition 19 fact sheet and Proposition 19 PowerPoint presentation, which has been posted to our agency's website under the Additional Resources tab of the Proposition 19 area. The PowerPoint presentation and fact sheet provide information on the parent-child and grandchild exclusion that became effective February 16, 2021, and provides information on base year value provisions for seniors and disabled persons that became effective April 1st, 2021. Future revisions will be made to the fact sheet and to the PowerPoint presentation once implementing legislation has been passed and property tax rules adopted. But as of now, both fact sheet and PowerPoint are current. The agency's communications officer and I are working closely and will collaborate to update the Proposition 19 fact sheet and PowerPoint as soon as the implementing legislation is passed and rules adopted. Additionally, work has been completed on talking points that board members' offices could use when presenting information to their constituents concerning Proposition 19. The talking points were designed to be used with the Proposition 19 PowerPoint presentation that was created. The TRA office and communications officer are collaborating on some ideas to draft some simple informational material that can be posted to the Proposition 19 page, explaining what taxpayers should do for the intergenerational transfer or base year value transfer under Proposition 19. And the informational material would point out what form number the taxpayer should use to apply for a particular exclusion or base year value transfer that they are applying for, that they should obtain that form from the assessor's office, and the form should be submitted to the assessor where the property is located. We are waiting for the issuance of an LTA with answers to frequently asked questions on base year value transfers. The communications officer and the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office are very committed to ensuring taxpayers have sufficient information concerning the effects of Proposition 19 and that it is easy to understand. That concludes my update for the Education and Outreach Implementation Plan. I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Members, I see a hand. Member Gaines, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair Vasquez. And wondering if Ms. Thompson could just expand a little bit on the Prop 19 fact sheet in terms of where are we on that? I know you're working with Mr. Kim and communications. Is that information up, or will it be up soon?
Yeah, so the Proposition 19 fact sheet, as well as the PowerPoint presentation, was prepared early February. That is posted, both documents, but they will be updated as soon as we have additional information, of course, from, once legislation is passed, as well as rules, once property tax rules have been adopted and approved by the Office of Administrative Law.
Okay, great, thank you. I know that there was discussion about a new LTA with questions and answers, so I was trying to figure out is that still to come?
So I believe the Property Tax Department indicated that they were still, it hasn't been quite posted yet, was the letter to assessors on frequently asked questions for the base year value transfers. I know the intergenerational transfers was issued, so.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All of that information is posted under the Proposition 19 webpage under the resources and guidance.
Yes. Great. Thank you for all your work. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I see a Vice Chair Schaefer's hand. Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Kim mentioned that the matters he and Ms. Thompson were cooperating on might be food for a webinar. Now that the pandemic is chiming down a little bit, maybe we could upgrade that to a seminar and actually have a physical get-together where the public could attend and ask questions. I'd like to have these in different districts, so that we all, as members, get a chance to preside. I know we've had in our district, I know we had one in the water district up in San Jose, and we could have one in a library that usually has an auditorium and parking available. I think now that we're winding down with the pandemic, we ought to take a look to, again, having some live session in different districts that we can invite the public and the media into. I don't think many people attend, but the mere fact that we're having it and we can put out a press release is good for our PR and good for the effectiveness of the BOE. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the members? Seeing none. Oh, wait, I see a hand. Member Gaines, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow through with and agree with the comments by Member Schaefer. I appreciate the opportunities for outreach to our constituents. And I know we're just coming out of this pandemic, but it'd be nice in hopefully the near future to have those opportunities where we can interact with our constituents and invite them to come to a public hearing. So thank you.
Thank you. No, I think we're all looking and waiting for that day where we can regroup and see each other in person and hopefully be able to hug again. We'll see. Anyway, with that, let me ask Ms. Taylor, I guess before we move on to the next item, do we have any written comments on this? Because that concludes that portion of it, right?
Correct. We do not have any written comments on these items.
can we check with AT&T and see if there's anybody in the queue by any chance?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there is anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment regarding the K1A through K1C items at this time?
Okay, and once again, if you would like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. 1, 0. And we have no one queuing up for a comment.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, please call the next item.
The next item is K2A, Chief Counsel's Report, Legal Workload Quarterly Report, General Discussion on the Legal Department's workload over the last 3 months. This item will be presented by Mr. Nanjo.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Chairman Vasquez, Vice Chair Schaefer, honorable members of the board, Henry Nanjo again, Chief Counsel. Happy to report that we have been making progress. Some things have happened in the first quarter of 2021. Specifically, our recruitments are going well. We have a tax counsel attorney who has accepted a position with us. The good news is she has some prior property tax experience, which is relatively rare in our search for a tax counsel. Unfortunately, she is finishing up a judicial clerkship with a federal judge with whom she's getting the property tax experience, and that's not going to end until probably toward the fall of 2021. So we have made the decision, given her experience, to wait for her. So she should be joining our staff sometime in September or October of 2021. We are in active recruitment of an SSA and hope to have another staff person to assist legal soon, as well as another tax counsel. We're kind of in the final stretches of that. As a report on telework, the legal department, due to COVID-19, still continues to telework in the second quarter of 2021 and obviously the first quarter of 2021, with the exception of essential activities. However, staff does come in if necessary into the office as needed, keeping social distance and other precautionary measures. And we continue to provide support for the board, executive office, property tax department, and our larger stakeholders through our work. In the first quarter of 2021, the California Lawyers Association Taxation Section sponsored their annual Eagles Lodge West Conference. This was done virtually given COVID, and both Sonia Yim and myself participated in a quite spirited discussion about Proposition 19. As far as Proposition 19 projects, I reported on that previously. As far as public record requests, in the first quarter of 2021, we had completed 60 Public Records Act request inquiries. 5 are currently pending, including some recent requests, and we expect that requests from the public are going to come in regularly as usual in the second quarter of 2021. In the first quarter of 2021, we completed 2 assignments regarding administration and support of board proceedings and or the executive office. 1 request we're still currently working on, and we continue to expect to have work in this category through second quarter of 2021. Regarding publication reviews, this is in support of the publications that the agency puts out. We've completed 25 assignments in first quarter of 2021. There's currently 1 pending assignment in process. With regards to regulations, I've already described the Proposition 19 regulations. That is Property Tax Rule 462.520 and 540. We are also in progress with Property Tax Rules 202 and 462.500. We are awaiting for final approvals on those from other departments to submit the final packages to OAL, and we expect these two rules to be finalized in the sometime in the next few months. And then there were other Section 100 changes that were done to basically complete the necessary informational changes due to our move to the Natomas area. Those are being finalized as well. And finally, we are also in the process of updating our regulations regarding Form 700 compliance, but we are awaiting FPPC's feedback and assignment of an individual to assist. As far as technical advice, in first quarter 2021, we completed 15 email responses, 1 memo, 16 phone call inquiries, and 7 special projects. Currently pending are new requests comprising 17 email inquiries, 4 letters or memo requests, 6 phone calls. And at this point, I would like to thank my team because they have done yeoman's work in taking up the challenges of Proposition 19 while simultaneously working on our backlog in a telework situation. That completes my quarterly update for the legal department. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oh, I'm sorry, Vice Chair Schaefer. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Danjo, I see 9 cases that are listed under pending litigation. We appear in each one of them as a defendant, which might suggest that, you know, all of our staff might be alumni of a public defender's office trying to protect ourselves. I'd like us to be a little more aggressive where it's appropriate, like district attorneys. More technical, a lot of it is misunderstood by other prosecuting agencies. Are there going to be some cases where we are the plaintiff, where we are going after somebody that maybe has it coming?
We are always on the lookout for any situations where the agency has to protect its rights. At this point, we don't have anything on the horizon, sir.
Well, as a former prosecutor, I look out for that, and just keep your eyes open. That's all I can ask. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Member Gaines, I see your hand up. Is that still an active hand?
Yes, thank you, Chair Vasquez. I just want to ask Mr. Nancho in terms of workload. Are we, meaning the legal department, are they caught up in terms of being able to respond to, I know we get a lot of questions that tries to clarify the law when it comes to property valuation or regulation. And I know we're making strides and improvements in terms of staffing up your team. So do we have a backlog?
Thank you, Member Gaines. Yes, we do. Our backlog, we unfortunately, due to the fact that BOE has a small legal staff, we kind of have to prioritize the requests. So, you know, obviously, board come first, followed closely by the assessors, and then from that point on, we try to assist the public as much as possible. As you may know, we get way more requests than we can handle. We have been chipping away at our backlog. We've also been creative in partnering with the property tax department, directing people where appropriate to our other guidance on our website or other resources, so they can, to a certain extent, look up their own answers. And we continue to actively try to assist as many people as we can.
Okay, and do you think that, do you think the nature of legal at the BOE is such that
I'm sorry, Member Gaines, you cut out there.
Members, it appears Member Gaines looks temporarily frozen. I'll work with his office to see if we can get him back online. Please proceed.
All righty, while we're waiting for that, is there any other members who have any comments or questions? While we're waiting for Member Gaines to come back and finish his comments, let me just check with Ms. Taylor. Do we have any written comments on this item, Ms. Taylor?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we, I guess while we're waiting, can we check with?
And maybe some of those
AT&T?
requests aren't.
Oh, here he is. He kind of came back and he left. All right, let's. Ms. Taylor, can you check with AT&T?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment regarding this item?
Certainly, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. 1, 0. And we have no one in queue for comment.
Thank you. While we're waiting for Member Gaines to come back, Mr. Nanjo, it's my understanding we don't need a motion on this. This is just informational, right?
Correct. That was just a report to the board.
All right. Why don't we, Ms. Taylor, why don't we go on to the next item, and then when we get Mr. Gaines back, we'll come back to this.
Great. The next item is K3A, Property Tax Deputy Director's Report, Operational Updates, a report on the status of pending and upcoming projects, activities, and departmental issues. This matter will be presented by Mr. Young.
Yes, good morning again, Chair Vasquez and honorable members of the board. David Young here again, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. I will provide you today with an update of the activities in the Property Tax Department. I will start out with the State Assessed Properties Division. Staff is in the final stages of finishing up our appraisal work for this season. Staff is working on approximately 350 or so appraisals. Work is going well. We are probably about a week or so out from finishing and finalizing everything. When we are complete, we will send out a summary of our staff's working paper. Actually, it will be available to us state assessees upon their request. We'll send it out to them along with a copy of our capitalization rate for their review. Staff is working diligently on preparing and getting all the work done and preparing for our next board meeting, in which we will present the value recommendations for the board's consideration and action. So things are looking good there. Staff has been working very hard, and we've been putting in a little bit of overtime in order to make all that happen. The next item the next area I want to cover is our CAPD, or County Assessed Properties Division. Work is continuing on the land trust, community land trust project. As you will recall, that is staff's guidance that we're developing on the assessment and valuation of land of low-income housing built on community land trust land. We received some comments that we'll need to go back out to interested parties for additional vetting. So we are in the final stages of preparing that and sending that back out. Staff is also continuing their work on review and updates of handbooks. And the one we are still working on right now is the Assessor's Handbook 570, and that's the assessment of commercial aircrafts. It is still in review, but we do have staff dedicated to that, and hopefully we will be able to make some progress very, very soon on that one. My next update will be on LTAs. As of today, we have 15 LTAs that were issued since January. I will highlight the 3 that were issued since our last meeting in March. The first one is 2021/013, and that LTA publishes the San Diego County Assessment Practices Survey Report. That was issued on April 7th of 2021 this year. The next LTA is 014, and that LTA just announces that our property tax calendar has been updated and reissued. It's always been on our website under legal resources. This is an LTA to announce that it is updated, and please take a look at it as you need to identify what actions and compliance duties are due. And then our next LTA is 015, and that's a report on the 2020 State Assessed Properties Appeals. That was issued on April 16th of this year, and that report shows the impact of the State Board of Equalization's action on state assessed property appeals during the 2020 season. So it's a summary of decisions of last year's appeals. A look forward, a couple items that we are working on for LTAs. The top one is our Prop 19 LTA, the one that deals with the base year transfers, and I believe we had a question earlier on this one. It is base year transfers for Prop 19. Staff has already drafted the LTA. It is under internal review right now, and it will follow the same questions and answer format as the prior one on Prop 19, the one that deals with intergenerational transfer exclusions. So that we're projected to put that on the next 30 days or so. Staff is also working on an LTA that summarizes litigations that happened in 2020. We put that on annually also, and it's a summary of court cases, appellate court cases. Let me take a quick look. We are also preparing to issue an LTA publishing Alpine County's Assessment Practices Survey Report. And the very last one I wanted to bring up is that amongst our regular LTAs that we put out every year, we put out a LTA announces the disabled veterans exemption increases. So every year, the amount that a disabled veteran is able to exempt under primary residence goes up a little by an inflation factor. The board calculates that and publishes. That should be it for the LTAs. I do want to bring up one more item, and that has to do with our training and certification. So I wanted to announce that the board has given its first two training courses remotely. One was just completed last week, and that's a course 5. It's a basic income course. And the week prior, we gave a class on basic appraisal. It's a course 3. So it was given through the Teams environment, and I believe it was well received and well attended. So staff looks forward to continuing working on converting additional classes that we could give remotely. That should be it. So that covers my update on the operational aspects of the property tax department. I am available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I know Member Gaines was off and having some technical difficulties, but I see a hand up with no visual. I'm wondering if that's him.
Yeah, that is, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can't,
Okay.
oh, now I can see you. All right.
Okay.
You know what? You want to go back? Because, you know, you got cut off on that last item. And I know you were into a heavy thought there, and we kind of lost it.
I feel like I got a good answer from Henry Nanjo, so I'm okay moving on. And I do have
Okay.
another question, if I
Sure.
could, for David Young, and that number one, I just want to thank you for the online training through Teams. I just think that that is so helpful for my district, and I think some of the other members' districts too. Just the ability to get that training in and do it online, do it virtually. I'll never forget going to Mono County and speaking to the assessor there, and he was looking for classes, and it's like it was a couple 100-mile drive to get anywhere. And so when that's available online, it's just a great opportunity, and something we've learned through the pandemic, that there are several options available for educating and for training. And I think that was accelerated through this process. And then I just wanted to ask David what his thoughts were about, his department. Are you able to get everything done in your department with your team? I always worry about a backlog, or maybe not being able to take a look at a particular rule that may need updating, things of that sort.
Oh, yes, thank you very much for that question. Overall, I am very happy at how staff and managers and supervisors and management in general has basically stepped up in this time, both during the pandemic and with this influx of Prop 19 implementation. So kudos to all that have been putting in the extra effort to handling the workload. So let me go portion by portion, if you allow me to do so. We have been actually we've been making some headway in many areas. Our welfare exemptions department and our LEOP department actually have worked through a lot of some of their backlog. So that is working really well. We have hired new folks, as Ms. Renati has reported earlier. We have had not only some internal promotions, but we've had some influx of new employees. So we look forward to their contribution. As with any new employees and new hires and even promotions, there's always a learning curve that follows it. So, but we're looking really. We anticipate some real boost in being able to do that. In our training and certification portion of our function, I know there was some teething issues to be solved in getting our courses to be able to give them remotely. But since we've been able to work through some of the challenges with working with teams, I am very hopeful that we will be able to offer more of these in the future. And you are absolutely correct. It not only saves the assessors both time and expense in sending staff to attend, but it's also the same for our staff. We often do travel for these classes, and that saves us also time and expense too. So we look forward to adding and expanding that portion of our training. Of course, we all look forward to one day being able to train and give classes in person and live. I think there is a certain quality to having live instruction, and I don't think we can ever replace that. But to supplement that, it's been a fantastic development. Our inquiries as a whole, we've shifted a lot of work to handle Prop 19 inquiries initially. We are thankful that some of it is tapered off and that we're able to shift some of the staff back to their regular duties. And our review of property tax rules. I know Mr. Nanjo and his shop has been handling quite a few property tax rules, but we do actually have a couple more on the horizon that we are under we are looking at and contemplating either a revision or some kind of amendment to. So there are items that we have had to shift a little bit of shift their priorities, but things are hopefully are normalizing a little bit, and with the additional staff that we've been able to hire and the promotions, we will even add a little bit more capacity in it. So I think things are, in general, the trend. No, we still have a little bit of work to do, but the trend is looking good. It's going up.
Good. How about on handbooks? Are we getting kind of ahead of the ball? I know some of those you have to update on a regular basis, but others you don't.
Right.
And in some cases, some of those have been on the books for a long time. So are we getting a handle on that? And is there a priority list? Is that being coordinated with the California Assessors Association and other folks that need to use those handbooks on a regular basis?
Yes, we've actually, we review them on a continual basis. The things that drive a update of a handbook to the top of that priority usually is either a change in law or a drastic change in appraisal methodology. And so as the change in law is usually what happens most often. So those handbooks, those that are affected by Prop 19 usually will get moved up to the front. There are some handbooks that have not had a whole lot of updates in our recent couple of years, but those tend to be a little more static. So as priorities go, they are a little bit lower on the ladder there. But as you all know, the handbooks, especially if it's a major rewrite, it's a long process. It involves interested parties, stakeholders are able to comment, and we actively seek their comments. And the give and take of them, because of the give and take of that nature, the projects are long term, and a 2-year time frame for beginning to end for a handbook revision is very common, and it's actually pretty standard.
Okay, I don't want to take any more time, but maybe if I could speak to the executive director, maybe after the meeting, just to kind of find out where we are. I think it'd be helpful for the board to know, what is our timeline for updating the handbooks, and how are we prioritizing it? I know that staffing's improving, so I'm hoping that we can get a better handle on that in the future. So thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Those are good comments and questions. I just had one last one, Mr. Young, and I was interested in your recent LTA number 2021/01 on the community land trust housing. And I have a question around that, and it's based on our new statute in section, I guess it's 214.18, effective 2020. A community land trust can get the welfare exemption if the property is being developed and is available for sale or for rent to qualified low-income persons. But the statute has a 5-year sunset date, which means it's subject to assessment after that. Since a community land trust is a nonprofit organization, why is the exemption designed to sunset?
Oh, I will venture an answer to that. In the recent past, most of these types of legislation that is basically considered a tax expenditure usually come with a sunset date, so the legislature will be able to review the effectiveness and their impact on revenues, and they will have a opportunity to either extend the sunset or not. That's I guess that is my working assumption as to why they included a sunset date on there.
Chairman Vasquez?
Yes. Ms. Stowers, go ahead.
Mr. Young is absolutely correct. Under RTC 41, all expenditures have a sunset date, all new expenditures. So that comes under the new category. And that provides the legislators an opportunity to evaluate their effectiveness. So that's why even you would see that in sales tax expenditures, income tax expenditures, all have sunset dates.
No, I get that because, you know, as a city elected in the past, I know we have sunset on many of these things. The only thing that I was questioning is that because this is a nonprofit, I was curious why they had a sunset on that. No, and it makes sense for a lot of the other things, at least in my mind, that you review those because they may or may not be effective, you know, after they see them implemented. That was my only question. But I guess you said at the end of the day, it sounds like those are subject to review when they do sunset, and hopefully legislators look at that. I was just concerned and worried about some of these nonprofits that, you know, are usually very tight on their budget, that they might be subject to losing that exemption. All right. Any other questions from any of the other members? Seeing and hearing none. Ms. Taylor, can we check by any chance if there's, well, first of all, is there any written comments on this item?
Chairman Vasquez, there are no written comments on this item.
Can we check with if there's any comments or any assessors who may wish to speak on this property tax department's report?
AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there is anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment regarding this matter?
Okay, if you'd like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. Once again, 1, 0. And we have no one queuing up for comment.
Thank you. Members, if there's no further discussion or comments, let me ask Ms. Taylor to please call the next item.
The next item is K4A, Legislative Research and Statistic Division's Chief's Report, update on legislative issues, update on administrative and program-related legislative bills impacting the BOE, and K4B, update on legislation related to the implementation of Proposition 19. This matter will be presented by Ms. Renati and Ms. Fleming.
Thank you. Chairman Vasquez and honorable members, this is Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director. Today I will provide a report on the legislation that may impact the Board of Equalization. Members, as you are aware, the legislature reconvened from spring recess on April 5th, and April 30th is the last day for policy committees to meet and report to fiscal committees on fiscal bills introduced to their House. Today I have provided you with a report which includes a listing of all legislation that impacts the Board of Equalization. We will continue to monitor these bills and will add any further legislation which affects the BOE's administered tax program. Previously, the board approved 2 legislative proposals regarding the extension of the valuation of inter-county pipeline rights of way and multi-jurisdictional assessment appeals boards. Both items are included in a committee bill, Senate Bill 825, introduced by the Senate Governance and Finance Committee. Last week, the bill was unanimously passed out of the committee and has been referred to the Committee on Appropriations. We will provide you with any additional updates as they are available. This concludes my update on bills that affect the Board of Equalization. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Was Ms. Fleming, did you have anything to add to that before we open up for questions?
Thank you, Chair and members. As of today, regarding the legislation related to the implementation of Prop 19, there are 2 active bills, Senate Bill 539 and Senate Bill 668. Members, as you know, Senate Bill 539 was introduced by Senator Hertzberg. Co-principal authors are Senators Allen and McGuire. And this property taxation bill is regarding the intergenerational transfers of real property and base year value transfers. This bill, members, is currently on the Senate's 3rd reading file. basically, which means it's scheduled for the senators to discuss it and possibly take action on it, but we're pending their actions. So it's teed up on their agenda. The next bill, members, is Senate Bill 668, which is introduced by Senator Bates. It too is a property taxation bill regarding change in ownership and inheritance exclusion. This bill was introduced in February of 2021 and seeks to delay the onset of specific provisions of Proposition 19 governing the purchase or transfer of real property between parents or grandparents and their children or grandchildren. And basically, this one proposes to extend that deadline to February 16th, 2023 from the current date, which is February 19th of 2021. So it's a 2-year extension. This bill has been referred to the Senate Governance and Finance Committee. It has not yet been set for hearing. And members, if there's no questions, that concludes this portion of the report.
Thank you.
Chair Vasquez, Deputy Controller Stowers here.
Yes, I see your hand. Go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
Thank you very much. I have a question for the Executive Director. I understand SB 539 has been set for the 3rd reading for quite some time. What are the consequences, if any, if this bill does not move?
Thank you for that question. It's an excellent question. At this point, the primary provisions are articulated in Proposition 19. Senate 539 is designed to add the clarification, as we've discussed, the clarification, et cetera. Until it passes, or in lieu of it passing, as we've been indicating, we're proceeding on our portion with the regulation process. One of the provisions, for example, Deputy Controller Stowers, was emergency regulations, and in lieu of the legislation that authorizes us to do so, we're proceeding with the regular rulemaking process. Some of the other provisions that are not quite clear, we are doing our interpretation of what Prop 19 provision and the law says based upon what's written in Prop 19, and we're expanding on that through our interpretations, through guidance, training materials, et cetera. But it's the guidance and the rulemaking that really is going to flesh out those details. Quite frankly, we just have to hold until we see if it's passed or not. If passed at a later point, we will come back and revisit any gaps between our guidance or our rulemaking and anything that might be stated differently in the legislation that comes out of Senate Bill 539. But as you know, members and all, the proposition took effect, and so we have to then operate the law based upon its current status and what's known.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Deputy Controller Stowers?
No, thank you. That was great. I appreciate the clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just had a question for Ms. Renati. If you would be able to start tracking and reporting on legislation on housing, specifically ADUs and related land use measures that may have property tax impacts. With so many proposals and actions occurring in this area, it's important for the board to have proper information if that's possible.
Chairman Vasquez, this is Lisa Renati. Thank you for the question. Currently, as you know, we track all bills which directly affect the BOE's property tax program, but we would be happy to also track all bills of interest to the board, which are relevant to the work of the county assessors, assessment appeals boards, and the like, so you have access to this important information.
Thank you. And if there's no other comments or questions, I just had one other key one for, especially as we're dealing with some of these housing issues. And for example, last year, some of the 2020 budget bills contain significant funding and mandates for affordable housing that may have property tax impacts regarding change in use, exemptions, new construction, or appraisal issues. For example, there is a project Room Key allocating $550 million through the Department of Housing and Community Development for acquisition of conversion of motels and hotels to permanent residential to secure hotel and motel rooms for people experiencing homelessness. The property exchange for affordable housing, allowing state and properties to be exchanged for another property or other properties belonging to local governments if the department HCD determines that the property to be conveyed to the state is suitable for affordable housing. The California Environmental Quality Act exemption for long-term project room key projects, if long-term covenants and deed restrictions require the units to be restricted for the homeless and lower income and very low income households for more than 55 years. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on those.
Chairman Vasquez, thank you for your for the information and his question. Our team is definitely going to go through and track any bills of interest that affect the board or of interest to the board, because it may affect the assessors. And those bills would include those in change in use or new construction exemptions or other appraisal issues. And I'll make sure that this information is included in our future reports so the board has important information on these important topics. I think those information could be, affordable housing is of note for the board, and we'll make sure that gets included.
Thank you. Members, do we have any other comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none. Let me ask Ms. Fleming, did you have something else to add to this, or can we move on?
No, Chairman and members, I think we're fine. And thank you for the questions and the comments on some of the material that we're tracking. Just to confirm, we're always looking forward to expanding like our bill tracking report and a number of other items on current and proposed legislation that directly impacts the agency and our property tax programs. But we also have a history of tracking those bills of interest and then taking advantage of those. And those are kinds of things that we could look at to determine for those of interest, general interest. We'll do our analysis of it, then make a determination of the nexus, because sometimes those are things that we could look at for some future maybe public policy hearings, information hearings, et cetera, to see where we might be able to provide some leadership for some other proposed future legislation. So it's just something to think about, but I just wanted to highlight that, you know, we have got a history of including in our bill tracking reports bills directly of impact and those of interest also. So we'll make sure that that's refreshed so you all have access to that material.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Let me ask Ms. Taylor, did we have any written comments on this item?
Chairman Vasquez, we do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T and see if there's any assessors or anybody in the public who may wish to speak on this legislation, including that of Prop 19?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there is anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment regarding these items at this time?
Okay, if you'd like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. 1, 0. And we have no one queuing up for comment.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, would you please call the next item?
The next item is K5, Taxpayers' Rights Advocate Office's report, update on the activities of the Taxpayers' Rights Advocate Office. This matter will be presented by Ms. Thompson.
Good afternoon, Chair Vasquez and honorable board members. I'm Lisa Thompson, Chief of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. I'm here to provide you with an update on the activities of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office to keep you informed. First, I would like to update you on the preparation for the upcoming Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing that would be held at the August 24th, 2021 board meeting. The Communications Officer, Peter Kim, and I have been communicating on ideas for changing the format of our posters and flyers that are distributed to notify parties about the hearing. Last month, I also informed you that in addition to traditional means of outreach via the posters and flyers and notifying taxpayer organizations, we will be advertising on social media platforms. Next, I will be sharing some statistics on cases completed by the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office in the prior month, March, and provide some insight on the types of those cases. In March 2021, we completed work on 18 cases. 1 was in Board Member Gaines' district, 4 in Board Member Cohen's district, 6 in Board Member Vasquez's district, and 7 were in Board Member Schaefer's district. Of the 18 cases completed, 5 were from the administrative category and 13 were from the valuation category. The administrative category includes topics such as creating and mailing tax bills, refunds, penalty cancellations, defaulted taxes, access to data, special assessments, or direct levies on the property tax bill. The valuation category includes topics such as change in ownership, decline in value, appraisal methodology, exclusions, exemptions, new constructions, enrollment of values, general property taxation, as well as assessment appeals. With respect to the administrative category, 3 cases involve tax bill penalties for not paying property tax installment timely, and 2 involve defaulted taxes where one taxpayer's home was going to tax sale and the other had an unsecured lien because the taxpayer had sold the property. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office assisted these taxpayers by providing information about the requirements of the tax collector to add penalty, provisions under which a tax collector can cancel penalties, and how to submit a penalty cancellation request. Additionally, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office helped the taxpayers understand the availability of a payment plan options and tax sale requirements when property taxes have become delinquent for 5 years and how unsecured liens are enforced. With respect to the valuation category, 5 of the 13 cases addressed various aspects of change in ownership. Of the change in ownership cases, 2 addressed transfers of interest in property held in joint tenancy or tenants in common, which resulted in reappraisal when one party was removed from title. And 2 of the cases involved property held in trust, one which had been granted the parent-child transfer exclusion for a parent's death and then later partially reassessed when one sibling transferred interest to another sibling. The other case involved disagreement with the assessor's treatment following the sale of property from a trust, for which the sale was authorized by a court case with 2 of the 3 trustee signatures. The last of the 5 change in ownership cases involved the purchase of a vacant lot next to a property owner's newly purchased home, which they felt the purchase price was above market value. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office assisted the taxpayers by providing information about when the transfers of interest in joint tenancies and tenants in common are reassessable, explaining reassessment events for trust property, and the valuation methodology for change in ownership. For the case with the trust property that had a court order, the TRA office helped the taxpayer understand why the property was assessed as one parcel with 2 older structures on it, as it was at the time of sale, rather than 2 vacant lots ready for new homes to be built upon them. For the trust property that was sold, we had also directed the taxpayer to pass correspondence from our agencies and the assessor's office to the taxpayer responding to that taxpayer. Additionally, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office helped the taxpayers understand they could provide comparable sales information to the assessor's office and of appeal remedies. Of the 13 cases in the valuation category, 5 addressed exclusions from reassessment and exemptions, of which 3 pertained to the parent-child transfer exclusion. 1 case pertained to the base year value transfer exclusion for seniors age 55 and over, and 1 involved the homeowner's exemption. The parent-to-child exclusion case also addressed various aspects of change in ownership, because the change in ownership for the death of a trustee had not been reported. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office helped the taxpayers by explaining the exclusion requirements, documentation they needed to submit to demonstrate qualifications, and the parent-child transfer form could be submitted more than 3 years after the change in ownership, since the property had not been reassessed. Additionally, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office coordinated with the Assessor's Office to ensure it had applied the homeowner's exemption for eligible years and going forward, and informed the taxpayer that the County Auditor's Office would issue a refund of taxes paid because the prior year's assessments did not reflect the exemption. The remaining 3 cases in the valuation category concern decline in value, property tax information, and assessment appeals. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office assisted the taxpayers by explaining that a property's assessed value can increase more than 2% a year if it is assessed below its factored base year value, which complies with the limitations of Proposition 13. For the case pertaining to appeals, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office explained information about appeals proceedings and how to find comparable sales to support the taxpayer's opinion of value. Additionally, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office helped the taxpayers by directing them to resources on our agency's website to address their needs. Additionally, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office continues to answer questions about Proposition 19. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my update. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I see Member Gaines. Go ahead, Member Gaines.
Great, thanks, Chair Vasquez. I want to thank Lisa Thompson for her presentation. And I was just curious in terms of the number of cases that you've handled. How many of those cases were in favor of the taxpayer?
They vary greatly. So, I can't really address or quantify, that. We help taxpayers in many ways. We might help them submit, again, the proper information to the assessor's office, or or information that, leads them to have successful, presentation for information, or some might be where we're explaining the law and why they were reassessed. So I kind of consider that kind of all successful, because then, even if it doesn't accomplish what the desired outcome for the taxpayer would be, is maybe that they aren't subject to reassessment, they come away from it understanding why the assessor reassessed their property and why that was correct under the law. So.
Okay, and is that in your report? So we can take a look at. I'm just wondering if I was going to go through it, could I take a look at each of the cases that you've been describing and find out, what was the question and then what was the result?
We maintain information in a kind of on different cases. I mean, we have a database, and we keep files on each of those cases, but that's more maintained within the operations of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. So what I've tried to do is, give you a little insight on the topic areas that have been asked, and when we have finished them during the month, and then kind of how we have assisted those taxpayers, rather than, you simply waiting kind of at the end of the year when you see at the annual report how many taxpayer cases we have resolved. So.
Okay, I'm just wondering if, and maybe we could talk about it offline, but I'm just trying to kind of figure out, this is like more detail on the cases without, you don't have to reveal any identity or anything of that nature, but it would be helpful to, and I'll just speak to my district. So maybe we could talk in a separate meeting about that, just in terms of.
Yeah, I think we could discuss that separately with the executive director and maybe council as far as
Yeah, thank you, Member
that
Gaines
information.
and
Thank you.
Ms. Thompson. This is Brenda Fleming, Executive Director. Member Gaines will be happy to circle back with you and flesh out a little bit more detail so that we can give you some information that will be helpful while still protecting the confidentiality aspects
Yes.
that Ms. Thompson requires.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'd be happy to circle back with you. Absolutely,
Wonderful.
be happy to circle back with you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you're done, Mr. Member Gaines? Okay. Ms. Stowers, I see Ms. Stowers' hand.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. Thank you, Ms. Thompson, for that report on your work as a taxpayer rights advocate. My voice. Wow, it's very difficult to be an advocate, and sometimes people are calling for basic questions. Sometimes they have a liability. They just need help in navigating the system. So it's hard to quantify the results when a lot of it is intangible. So I just want to say thank you, Ms. Thompson. I think that you guys are doing a really good job in providing the needed services to the constituents in all of the districts. And I respect and understand the need for individual members wanting to drill down more within their district so that that member can provide additional services to their constituents. But I just wanted to just kind of give you a shout out because I know it's a very, very difficult job to be an advocate when you're tasked with trying to administer the property tax laws, but at the same time, you have to provide a very valuable service. And sometimes it may be bad news, news that they don't want to hear, but your hands are often or could be tied. So, and I talk to a lot of advocates, whether they're with the IRS, the Franchise Tax Board, or CDTFA, and they, as you know, they all have that same situation where they're trying to help, but are also still, trying to help, but provide an easy to understand explanation of what's going on. And I think that's really one of the keys that you and your team is doing. So again, great job. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands or comments, Ms. Taylor, can you check to see, do we have any written comments on this item first?
We do not have any written comments.
With that, can you check with AT&T if there's any assessors or any members of the public who wish to speak on this TRA report?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this item? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, we request that callers provide their name.
Thank you. If you'd like to make public comment, please press 1 and then 0. Once again, to make public comment at this time, please press 1, then 0 on your telephone. There are no lines in queue at this time.
Thank you. I think I saw a hand from Vice Chair Schaefer. Yes, go ahead, Vice Chair Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was very pleased a moment ago to hear callers requested to provide their name. There's been a battle as to whether they can be anonymous or not, and Henry says yes, and I say no. I would like to, speaking to Ms. Thompson, I appreciated her report very much. I have a few questions to her. She talks about the upcoming hearing in August of this year, that she's going to do posters and flyers. Posters to me are several square feet in size and bright colors, and you run around and put them on phone poles or fences, and flyers are more like press releases that are a few pages, hopefully somebody will read. I'd like her to tell me a little bit about posters versus flyers that she intends to put out, but I would like to strongly emphasize that she put out a press release, and I would like to, when she sends it out, to take a yellow highlighter and highlight at the bottom that the public is invited to attend and ask questions. And these should be sent out to law schools, I would say high school seniors classes, I'd say any university on our mailing list, because they put them on their bulletin board. And I know when I was a undergraduate at Cal, I would see things on bulletin boards that I could attend, and I would attend and ask questions, and it was an educational opportunity for me. I remember going over to a law school and listening to a man from New York lecture about stockholders' rights, and I was so impressed with him that I went to New York and went to work for him the following summer. So our outreach to educational institutions with press releases, I think, is very important. And we might even, if we have the funds, buy a little internet advertisement mentioning that on such and such a date there will be a taxpayers forum, and appearing live, the 5 members identify us and your opportunity to ask questions, and perhaps we can be of assistance to you. I'd like us to make a little more noise, and I know that Ms. Thompson is capable of that, and I will personally give her all the backup that she can use. Thank you.
Thank you for your
Yes,
comments
we
and
do
suggestions.
Thank you for that. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Ms.
Thank you for that, Board Member Schaefer. So we do a press release as well. And we notify different taxpayer organizations. I reached out to them personally, as I've done for the last, I believe, 2 years. But we did add another group last year, which was I think the California Society of CPAs. But we notify primary taxpayer groups in California. So CalTax, Howard Jarvis, Taxpayers Association, Spidell Publishing, Cal Chamber, California Society of CPAs, as well as the California Enrolled Agents. So, we rely on them to distribute that to their members. We found that that's a good way of informing taxpayers of that availability. And the posters, I don't recall the exact dimensions of the posters, but we do send to different offices, county assessors and tax collectors. I would have to really check and confirm back with you, but I think they're like 14 by 20, the posters, and then the flyers are more like 8 by 10 or 8 inches of that nature. So that will be done. But also, social media. I've already talked with the communications officer about that, but it will be notified on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as the Board of Equalization website. So we do intend to do that. So thank you so much. And information will be clear to the taxpayers that, we'd like them to come. We invite them to have the opportunity to talk before this board and ask questions and provide feedback and that nature. So thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, let me go ahead and ask Ms. Taylor to please call the next item.
The next item is L1A, Board Member Requested Matters, New Matters, COVID-19 Impact on Deadlines for Base Year Transfers and Other Property Tax Deadlines. This matter will be presented by Member Cohen.
Thank you. Member Cohen, are you available? I can't see you, but I'm sure you're on the line somewhere.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you.
All right, good. And I hope you're
I can hear you and see you.
Okay, fantastic. So I appreciate an opportunity to make this really brief presentation today and ask for your consideration. So this L item is, in response to the, I bring it to you today in the spirit of seeking the broadest and most compassionate relief for taxpayers. Particularly, I'm thinking about those that have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And just to recap, over a year ago, a few of us never would have imagined that this disruption in life would have ever occurred. The governor issued his stay-at-home order on March 19th, 2020, and we all expected the order to be temporary. I'm sure we didn't think that we'd be here at over 1 year later. But unfortunately, the restrictions have extended over 13 months, and the disruptions will most likely continue into the future. So what I'm proposing is for taxpayers who have sought to compete base year value transfers, those that were caught up against a 2-year deadline imposed by the state constitution to complete transfers to new principal residences. Now, other taxpayers, particularly those who lost homes in disaster areas, who have been impacted by, who also have been impacted by the deadline in this regard, have some statutory relief as possible. So what we need to do, and what I'm requesting today, it's pretty clear and straightforward. It's that you join me in requesting that the executive director review all the relevant property tax deadlines that have or could be impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and then suggest whether constitutional amendments or statutory action is needed to provide relief. With that said, regarding those taxpayers age 55 and over, those and those who are not able to complete base year value transfers within the 2-year constitutionally mandated deadline, I suggest that the deadline be extended to such time as that the executive order is lifted. I think that's fair. Or possibly, here's some other language to consider, or such other a date that the legislature determines the economy has been reopened statewide in plus 1 year. So that builds in enough flexibility for taxpayers to get that relief. And in addition to asking the executive director to report on this suggestion, I'm also asking that the executive director also report on a couple other board issues. Let me pull up my list. I think there's just 4 of them. First, I'd like Ms. Fleming to let us know what the new deadlines mandated under Prop 19 for the purchase of new construction of replacement principal residences for victims of fire or natural disasters. I'd like to know if that also requires an extension. Second, I'd like to know whether additional statutory authority is needed to continue to provide relief on all property tax deadlines that have been previously extended for taxpayers due to the pandemic, and any other property tax deadline extensions that also may be appropriate. And then I also would like the executive director to report back to us when you consider, or you base upon the results of this review by the executive director, the board, our board, may wish to sponsor appropriate constitutional amendments and additional statutory authority, again, all in an effort to provide relief to those property owners and to those taxpayers. So these are just a few thoughts that I'd like to just to put out there. And let me just hurry up and conclude by saying that such relief would be totally consistent with the relief that's been extended to other taxpayers and other stakeholders by the Internal Revenue Service, by the Franchise Tax Board, and through various governor executive orders. And these executive orders extend property tax deadlines, extended the deadlines for assessment appeals board, and so I'll stop there. Mr. Chair, how does this sound? Does this sound like something that we could get behind?
Yes.
Law doesn't provide. Oh, okay.
Well, no, go ahead. If you're finished, you want to finish it?
Well, I was just going to say that despite, having an open heart and goodwill, and sometimes the only solution is a constitutional or statutory relief. And I think that we should entertain that conversation. And should we decide to move in that direction, move with urgency, all with the taxpayer's best interest in mind. That's it for me. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I know we have several hands up, but just to respond to your question. I think this is a good approach. You mentioned that to put it before our executive director, which I think is probably the best, and have her review the data, because I know from some of these folks, I'm thinking of the taxpayers, they were kind of hit with the perfect storm, between, transferring a piece of property in 2020 and then getting hit with, the COVID restrictions and then Prop 19. I'm wondering, as we ask the executive director to look into it a little bit deeper, if it's something that seems to be brewing throughout the state. I haven't heard it so much in LA County yet, but I imagine it'll come to a head here pretty soon, because I keep hearing, at least on the real estate side, I'm thinking, God, at least where I'm at in LA County, and especially on the west side, there's just very few properties that are up for sale. So the supply is very limited, which means the cost has really gone through the ceiling, which I was kind of surprised given the COVID situation. But I guess it's basically because there's just not a whole lot of people looking to sell. So it's there's really it's kind of an interesting dynamics that's going on. But I imagine as this thing rolls out and as people are going back to work, and in some cases not going back to work, they may get hit a little bit harder with possible, foreclosures on their properties. Because I know a lot of them right now, the banks have been real lenient, but I don't know how long that's going to last. So, no, I think we should definitely have staff take a look at this and see what ideas or suggestions they may have, and maybe things that we need to look at from the state level that could help and hopefully assist some of these property owners so they don't lose their places down the road. But there's a couple hands. Let me go with Member Gaines. I saw your hand first. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair Vasquez, and I want to thank Member Cohen for bringing this forward and elevating the issue, because these were unique circumstances in terms of the California economy and the pandemic and the short period of time that people had to react to Prop 19. And, I was looking at an article in the Marin Independent Journal titled Prop 19 Unleashes Wave of Marin Property Transfers. But it does highlight an area, and I think it's an equity issue, where if people had means, if they had the CPA, if they had the estate attorney, a lot of folks made changes and they were able to get those done before the guideline. And so I think if we could take a look at some of these deadlines and provide extensions so that everybody had an opportunity to make some potentially necessary changes for their families, that would, I think, address a lot of the concerns and frustration and anger that people have expressed by just not being able to, number one, understand the proposition, and then number two, act accordingly in the best interests of their families. And there's a bill that Senator Pat Bates did move forward, Senate Bill 668, that provided that extension to February 16th of 2023. It's my understanding that bill is in committee and the bill is not, I don't believe it's been heard yet, but I guess I have a question in terms of, is that a vehicle? Is that a vehicle that you're speaking to, Member Cohen, or would this be an independent effort by the BOE that could be more expansive even? I think some of the things that you were talking about included looking at additional deadlines.
I'm talking about additional deadlines. I'm just asking the executive director to really zero in and drill down on what's out there. I think kind of at this point it's a little bit unknown, and maybe we should pivot to the executive director and ask her if this is something that she'd be able to provide this board information. Before I do that, Ted, let me ask you just a quick follow-up question. When you say a vehicle, what exactly do you mean?
Well, there's just talking about there's a bill.
Oh, the Bates bill? You're talking about Bates?
Yeah, so Bates bill, right. I was
got it.
Yeah,
okay.
I was interchanging that with a vehicle. So.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So I'm very aware and have been watching it. As you know, it hasn't been very much movement to it, and which is why I'm wondering if there's another avenue or vehicle that we need to use to move the taxpayers, move in the best interest of the taxpayer. Yes. So I don't have a definitive yes or no, Senator Gaines. It's just that I'm very aware. We have heard about the Bates bill. It was reported back to us last month, and it's been very little, I think, to no movement. So that's not the only vehicle. I think that's not the only way we should be moving.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you bringing it forward. I think it is an issue of concern that we're hearing from our constituents. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Executive Director Fleming, if you are able, I think you heard my request. Could you comment on just your initial thought? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Cohen and members. Really good discussion. I think this is consistent. And if I may, Member Cohen, just kind of rewind the video for us. Believe it or not, a year ago, if you recall, this time last year in the early stages of the pandemic, our focus included the impact that COVID-19 restrictions were having on our property tax deadlines. And if you recall then, I was providing daily updates to the members, if you recall, regarding, okay, here's what's happening today and et cetera. And at that time, our conversations did include some discussions around the lessons learned regarding the scope and the flexibility of the board's authority to address, these kinds of scenarios and issues. And really was focused on what kind of authority did we have, how flexible was it, were there restrictions, but really, in essence, what was the agility, did it provide the agility that we needed to support, at the time, county assessor deadlines, assessment appeals board deadlines, taxpayer related issues, et cetera. So I think to your point, to the extent that there are opportunities, there's a need and opportunities to help the taxpayers to look at some of these deadlines. I do think it's worthwhile. And again, it's consistent with the lessons learned discussions that we had, this time last year. And as you all know, we were able to achieve some of what we were able to achieve over this last year through a number of executive orders. So we did have, definite conversations about how do we strengthen our ability to help more as appropriate. And so some of the things that we could look at is some of the existing deadlines, many of which are published in our property tax calendar. We can take a look at what's involved in it, and then really, what our current administrative authorities are, and to what degree we could look at some remedy or some improvements to the scope of our administrative authority. So I think it's a good idea for us to take a look at. There is a broad brush that you offered today. So what we would ask, for the members, at the members' pleasure, I'm trusting that their support to kind of scope this out and give us some time to go through a review of those deadlines. To take more action. So I think it's something that's reasonable. I think it is something that would be helpful to the taxpayers, and we can definitely scope out specifically those things that are in the scope of our authority, and I think that's broad, and we can do more. So my pleasure to assist.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Senator Gaines, I think that answers a little bit of your question. Looks like we've got Yvette Stowers.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Stowers still has her hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Great suggestion, Member Cohen. And considering COVID-19 and all the restrictions, I definitely support a review of the existing property tax deadlines to see if there's some way to make changes, whether it's statutory or a constitutional change, and any other items when it comes to property tax, like property tax valuation. I'm thinking of Santa Clara County Assessor Stone took a proactive step when it comes to lowering the lower values in commercial property because of COVID-19 and the restrictions. And so he's already proactively looking to lower some commercial property. don't know if the other counties have done so, but I will highly recommend it. But with respect to your particular suggestion, I support and am ready to move forward with a review of the existing statutes. But I would say that let's not forget about our partners, the county assessors, the local government, because property tax revenue goes to local government, and to California State Association of Counties, CSAC. So when we go through this review, we definitely need to loop them into the process. We don't want them to have any surprises, and we want to make sure that all parties are in agreement.
Thank you. Ms. Cohen, did you have a motion in mind?
I don't necessarily know if we need to make a motion to offer this direction to the executive director. Do we? Maybe Henry?
Just turn your sound on and tell them it's not working.
It is on, and
Vice Chair Schaefer, I think,
my sound
sorry.
is, my hand is not working.
oh, it's not, okay.
Okay, I just wanted to say, I wanted to commend Member Stowers and Member Gaines on their comments, and I also want to especially thank Member Cohen for bringing forth this issue, and I think it elevates the board in its service to the public, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Nanjo, I believe you were going to weigh in whether we need an official motion or is direction sufficient?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Vasquez. Member Cohen, to respond to you, this can be done either through a motion or through direction. In an effort to be clear, a motion probably would be a better practice. Thank you.
Okay.
But it's optional and
let me
it's at
just,
the pleasure of the board.
All right, so I believe this sums it up. Hold on, let me find myself my notes.
Member Cohen, is it fair to say that your motion would be just to direct our executive director to look at all upcoming deadlines as it refers to property taxes and to see if in fact we need to respond more expedient on some of these issues as they come up?
Yeah, you could say that. I would say based upon the results of the review that the executive director gives us, that the board may wish to sponsor appropriate constitutional amendments and additional statutory authority. Let me see here. That's not exactly what I'm trying to say here. So what I'm trying to request today is that I make a motion that the executive director review all relevant property tax deadlines that have or could be impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. That's it.
Okay.
And I also would add perhaps that she suggests whether a constitutional amendment or statutory action is necessary to provide relief. How is that as a motion?
Stowers, I would second that motion as stated by Member Cohen.
Thank you.
And so Member Cohen, so it's your understanding that she would gather this information and I guess report back to us, and hopefully in the next meeting or two. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, absolutely, it's appropriate. And I just got my notes in front of me, and I want to make sure that this motion is tight. And so I'd like to make a motion to rescind that last motion and propose a new one that's a little bit tighter and cleaner in language. Okay.
Okay. I withdraw my second.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stowers. Now, my current motion is to request the executive director to review existing constitutional and statutory property tax deadlines impacted by COVID-19 and report back to the board with recommendations. That's my motion.
Second.
And I'm assuming Ms. Stowers seconds that? Okay.
Yes.
And now that we have a motion on the floor, I see a hand from Member Gaines. Go ahead, Member Gaines.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Vasquez. Just a question of clarification. So would that include deadlines within Prop 19?
I don't understand your question. Deadlines within Prop 19.
Well, we had,
Those deadlines are already come and gone. They're in place.
Okay,
right?
so we're not addressing Prop 19 in any way then, sounds like.
Well, yes, we are addressing Prop 19. We would like to hear her analysis.
Okay, but we're not gonna.
Of all relevant deadlines. So that does include the Prop 19 deadlines, the two, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for asking.
I'm sorry, Deputy Controller Stowers here.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
Ms. Cohen, I understand you're asking the executive director to address all property tax deadlines. And so that will include Prop 19, but not the effective date of Prop 19, but the different deadlines within Prop 19. It's a little nuance there. Okay.
It's a little bit, it's a little nuanced, but that is correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Should we give the executive director, I'm sorry, should we give the executive director a time frame of when we want this report to report back to us?
I'm happy to give it to her. I'm actually would be interested in her feedback to see what would be a fair time frame for her. I don't want to be overburdensome with her for her and her staff. So perhaps Ms. Fleming could let us know.
Thank you, members. This is a really great discussion, and thank you for the opportunity to have a little time to flesh that out. It would be very helpful to have a little time. Right now, the staff, as you know, are fully engaged in Prop 19 and a lot of recruitment activities. So if the board would be so kind to give us at a minimum 60 days and perhaps within 60, 90 days come back with that plan. Some of that work is on our radar already to look at that. But if we could get at least 60, 90 days to be able to look at that information, what I could do then with that extra time frame is perhaps give some incremental updates on it regarding our progress, but a more comprehensive report no later than 90 days out. Would that be acceptable and to the board?
So you're talking about July, which is well into the summer. That's I'm assuming May being 30 days, June, July being a total of 90
May,
days.
June, July, and that would line up because it would give us plenty of opportunity to look at the deadlines. Number one, come back, have discussion here. The legislature would then be taking their summer break in mid-July, come back for the last month. And so really when you start to look at the legislative time frame and the ability to look at any proposed legislation, should that be, the board's actions after this, we would be ready for the 2022 legislative year when bill introduction would occur the first quarter of 2022. So we could line all that up also. And again, I'm more than happy to give incremental reports as needed.
Oh, perfect. Really I think that would actually, I think that will be helpful and welcomed, phase reports of what you've determined. If we could get phase reports on a monthly basis as you continue to build out, that would actually instill more confidence in me that this project is on the right track. I hate for you to invest 30, 60, 90 days of staff time and it not yield exactly what I'm looking for. So if you come back in 30 days to the next board meeting and say, okay, here's a broad outline. This is what we're thinking about. Is this in line with what you're thinking? I think that would be helpful.
And the clarification is helpful. And if I may just ask the question in terms of the scope, because I heard a little bit of a shift there. So just to restate the motion, is the motion scoped to looking at those deadlines related to Prop 19 and COVID? Because I thought I heard the initial motion was to COVID, but then I heard a comment on Prop 19.
The initial motion is to COVID, but as you can imagine, the COVID pandemic will have, invariably, I would imagine, have a impact on the Prop 19 deadline.
Okay, we'll work with that. I'll work with staff to get that nailed down.
Thank you.
And I see Member Gaines in the queue. Go ahead, Member Gaines.
I'm just looking for clarification. the motion as presented would not entertain the adjustment of the February 16th deadline with regards to exemptions of Prop 19. Is that correct?
Is your question towards me?
Yes.
Senator Gaines?
Yes, sorry.
Could you repeat it one more time?
Yeah,
That's
so.
okay. Can you repeat it one more time?
Yes. I'm just looking for clarification as to whether your motion includes potential extension of the February 16th deadline with regards to the elimination of exemptions.
Yeah, so the motion does not include it per se, it doesn't explicitly spell it out, but what it does build in is the executive director an opportunity to analyze it. Give us a, you know, I want to know what's out there. So it's not a yes and it's not a no. It's more like an I don't know. Let's study it, find out what she and her staff have found, and then when they come back, then we can take an action, draft legislation, or we'll just have more information to act on.
Okay. Now, question number 2 would be, and we've talked a lot about this, and that would be the change in valuation of property as a result of the pandemic. And you know, we have to do that kind of a year and look, you know, we have to go another year and look back. So would we be taking a look at the economic impact on the reduction in value of real estate and how that affects, you know, business owners and property owners? Would that be included in this? Because I think that's going to be a big issue.
I agree. That is exactly what I'm looking to drill down to find out these answers. So these are all, I mean, so the motion, it's very large and it's very broad, but I'm hoping that we can be able to capture some information that will help us distill answers to questions that you're asking and answers to questions that we probably are not even thinking about. Right?
Yes.
So
yeah, I'm supportive.
Okay, perfect. I love that. Thank you. I think this is going to be quite interesting, and who knows what we will find. And, you know, based upon our findings, I see us taking it again to the next level, bringing it to the governor's attention, is bringing this to the legislature's attention because of the unforeseen ramifications of passing such legislation. So let's look at it in its entirety and analyze it, and then begin to course out our next steps. Mr. Chair, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just have one last question. As we move forward with this motion, is it your thought or thinking down the road that, I guess, depending on as it comes, this information comes back to us from our executive director, were you kind of envisioning that maybe this comes back as a M item or some kind of a, maybe even a policy, public policy discussion we might have at a future meeting? Member Cohen? Did we lose you?
Looks like her microphone is muted.
Sorry, I'm here. So just so we're clear, and this is for you, Gary, I'm talking to you on the phone, on the audio line, but you're seeing my video. So that's why there's a little bit of a lag. Okay, just so we're clear on that. So Vasquez, just to answer your question, just report out on my L item.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Seeing no other comments or questions, I guess it looks like we should be ready to vote. Oh wait, Ms. Stowers. Go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
I mean, this is a really, really good discussion. It's really, really an important item. And I just want to make sure that our executive director is clear on what we're asking her. So Ms. Fleming?
Yes, I'm here.
So are you clear on the motion, what Ms. Cohen is looking for? Or that is all property tax deadlines? To take a look at all property tax deadlines and report back on if there's a need for statutory change or constitutional changes. And of course, that will include property tax deadlines that change under Prop 19. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're looking to roll back Prop 19 itself, but there are deadlines within Prop 19.
Correct. I think that helps to clarify Ms. Cohen's intent. Yes.
I want to make sure that we're all clear on what we're voting on this, because it's complicated.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, and what I'll do also, members, just for reference, and I appreciate, Member Cohen giving us the opportunity to come back with some incremental reports. So what I can do is we'll sit down, we'll come back and look at the original material in terms of the request, take a look at reviewing the material, and then we'll scope it out at that point. But I'm going to roll this up, if you would allow me to, just with the board's approval as a part of this motion, to look at the scope of property tax deadlines that would be impacted by COVID-19, as Member Cohen originally stated, and then any of the workflow or cycles or deadlines that come out of Prop 19. So we'll just take a look at those deadlines to assess them to see, to what degree statutory or constitutional changes might give us some more agility or flexibility. And Ms. Cohen, please correct me if my summary is misstating that. I think the benefit of coming back with some incremental updates is that if for some reason we learn something as a result of that initial analysis, or if we're not quite hitting the mark, we will have an opportunity to make the adjustments. So if, as a part of this motion, if I may ask for just a little flexibility to confirm everything as we look through it more, then that would be appreciated. I think the general motion in terms of Ms. Cohen's intent is a good idea, and I'm prepared to accept that assignment, if the board would allow.
I honor that and happy to allow that.
All right, sounds like we're pretty clear now. And we'll ask Ms. Taylor if she could please call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez, do we want to take public comment?
Oh, I guess we should. I'm sorry. Yes.
AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this item? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, we request callers provide their name.
Okay, and if you would like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. Once again, if you'd like to make a comment, 1, 0. And at this time, we have no one in queue for comment.
Thank you. And I'm assuming, Ms. Taylor, we have no written comments on this item, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now we'll go ahead, and if there's no other comments or questions, we'll go ahead and take a vote on this motion.
Chairman Vasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Aye.
Member Gaines.
Aye.
Member Cohen.
Aye.
Deputy
Listen,
Controller Stauer.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all present. Thank you for that, and we'll look forward to that report coming back. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the next item.
The next item is L1B, Board Member Requested Matters, New Matters, Policy Development Opportunities for Assisting with Affordable Housing Efforts. This matter will be presented by Chair Vasquez.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Taylor. Members, as you know, our state is facing an unprecedented need for affordable housing. The governor, the legislator, and many of our state and local agencies are attempting to address it by getting at least 3.5 million new units in place in the next 3.5 years. In terms of the BOE jurisdiction, almost all affordable housing has property tax implications, whether we're talking about changes in assessed value, the availability of exemptions, restricted value, long-term leases, change in use or change in ownership, and even Prop 19, parent-to-child base year value transfers. Excuse me. I am proposing that the board re-engage by gathering information, developing policies, and making recommendations that would assist the state in achieving its goal. As a first step, I would like us to hold a public policy discussion under an M maybe as early as May, but if not in May, maybe look at it in June if that's a possibility, and it could fall under an L2 and then have a public policy hearing shortly after. Our purpose would be to, one, invite and gather information from subject matter experts on current and proposed affordable housing legislation and other efforts so we can identify property tax impacts, and two, develop solutions to help address any property tax problems or hurdles, and three, help identify and recommend additional avenues in the property tax context for expediting affordable housing development. For example, several housing bills were signed by the governor this last year, which have property tax impacts. One that comes to mind is AB 3308, which empowers school districts to use low-income housing tax credits to develop affordable housing for teachers and school employees on district land. In Los Angeles, an entry-level teacher must spend more than 85% of their income to afford an average medium level apartment. The bill allows other members of the public to occupy the housing after district employees have had full opportunity. I would like to learn the details on this, how the units would be either assessed or exempt, and whether this effort may be expanded for all members of the public. AB 1851, which was a Yes in God's Backyard bill, makes it easier for faith-based organizations to build affordable housing on their parking lots by reducing or eliminating local parking requirements and preventing cities from forcing them to later make up lost spaces when a parking lot is developed for housing. I would like to see if faith-based organizations are taking advantage of this, and if our concerns about change in use or losing their property tax exemption is something we should look at. There's another bill, AB 68 and AB 881 in 2019 went into effect on January 1, 2020. Together, there was 5 other bills authorizing accessory dwellings, ADUs, in every housing type, including multi-family buildings, and Department of Housing and Community Development is tasked with the role of implementing the laws to keep the pressure on cities to meet their housing obligations. With the passage of Prop 19, the board needs to determine its impacts on people who build ADUs. For example, what is the impact on the intergenerational transfer exclusion if an ADU is in a person's personal principal resident and is leased? Alternatively, what is the impact of an ADU is sold to a third party? And then what is the impact of base year value transfer exclusions if an ADU is once principal residence is leased or sold? This year, a dozen new housing bills are already proposed. A few examples are the AB 561, the Ting bill, which incentivizes more homeowners to create ADUs. SB 6, which is the Caballero Rubio, which allowed housing development projects in office or retail commercial zones. You had SB 9, which was an Atkins, Caballero, Rubio, and Weiner, allows duplexes and lot splits in single family residential zones. SB 15, which was a bill would establish grant program to incentivize local governments to rezone idle retail sites for workforce housing. AB 672, a Garcia bill, which would require city and county-owned facilities to rezone them, possibly even looking at public space like golf courses and others that could potentially be repurposed into housing for families. There was an AB 1199, 1199, a Gibson bill, which would create an excise tax on landlords who own 25 or more properties, generating about $1 billion to initially pay for back rent owed by tenants, and thereafter to bail out mom and pop landlords who are struggling to stay afloat. On the other hand, there are two bills that would prohibit the use of housing on land located in very high fire severity zones. For example, that was an SB 12 McGuire and SB 55 Stern and Allen bill. In conclusion, there are many other issues and examples, and every board member is concerned and probably has access to subject matter experts in addition to expertise of the BOE staff and assessors for the use to engage in policy development. And I was, in looking at all this that's going on and things that we've been talking about recently, I was wondering if there's an interest and support from the board to possibly put together a public hearing on this, whether it's in May or June, depending on what we feel the staff's workload may be as it comes up in the next month or two. And with that, let me just open it up for any questions or comments the members may have along these lines. I see a hand from Member Gaines. Go ahead, Member Gaines.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Vasquez. I appreciate you bringing this forward. And yeah, I'm supportive of board action on this. Several of the bills you mentioned, I actually voted on when I was in the Senate, in particular the one for teachers and using excess land that the district has to provide housing, because how difficult it is for folks to be commuting long distances just to afford a home. And then Senator Wiener had many attempts to try to reform housing and provide more housing stock in the state. And it was met with a lot of controversy, but we have a problem when we're talking about the average home selling for $700,000. We've got millions of people who will never be able to afford a home if we don't highlight it and see what actions that we can take. Certainly the legislature and the governor, and what we can do also here on the Board of Equalization. So thank you for bringing this forward, and I am supportive.
Thank you. It looks like Member Schaefer, you kind of froze. Did you have your hand up? Vice Chair Schaefer, I think you're muted though.
No, Chair, I just was standing still.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I do see a hand from Ms. Stowers. Go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. You said a lot. And affordable housing, the lack thereof, the lack of supply, housing, homelessness, it's a major issue, and yes, it needs to be addressed. I'm concerned about trying to put too much on our plate as a public policy hearing. I'm not really tracking what you're saying. Are we just saying anything dealing with housing? Are we going to limit our scope to housing when it comes to the welfare exemption, which is a program that we administer in partnership with the assessors? Or are we throwing everything on the table? If we're throwing everything on the table, I would caution us on that, because it's a lot out there. And there are a lot of bills that were introduced this session, and we don't know if they're going to move or not. And of course, individual board members can take a position on those bills, but I would be a little concerned if we're going to do a public policy hearing that may give the perception that staff is weighing in on something that they should not be, or we're directing staff to weigh in on something, to interfering with what's that word I'm looking for? Legislative analysis that the governor may be looking for. That's what I'm looking for. You know my favorite term, AB 102.
No, you're actually raising a good point. And if this helps you a little bit, I kind of threw it all out there just to show you how much is out there because, like I think Member Gaines just brought up, there's some bills out there that really I don't think impact or at least have an impact on us in terms of the property tax piece. They're just people are just throwing everything out there. And I think
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I was muted. I'm sorry. What I was trying to say is that you're right. I put out all these, or I mentioned a lot of these housing bills, affordable housing bills that are out there, and some that obviously I don't think really we need to weigh in on, but I just put them out there to give you an idea, or at least to put it out there that there's so much going on as we look at both the Assembly and the Senate side that is trying to assist or help the governor, because you're looking at he's got this pretty aggressive goal to try to put 3.5 million new units out there, and that's a mammoth of a task. But I was kind of thinking that maybe we just kind of zero in and focus more in our hearing on things that relate to property tax. For example, the issue that Member Gaines just brought up earlier, and I think he said he might have voted on it when he was in the Senate, and that was to kind of repurpose schools, I should say, land that they have that's underutilized that now they're looking to repurpose, let's say, for example, a parking lot and possibly put in the parking lot in subterranean parking, which then allows them to build 2 or 3 stories above that could be housing. And obviously they're exempt currently under our rules for property tax, but if they start creating housing, it may take a rule change on our end of it. And I think we should, try to advocate or participate and weigh in on that, because I think that makes sense for us to look at. And not only am I thinking of maybe just school districts, but I know cities, counties, and even the state-owned properties that currently are exempt, which means we're not collecting any property tax on those right now anyway. So hopefully that wouldn't impact or really hurt our overall budget because we're not drawing any money off of that. The only difference is that they're going to be possibly turned into other uses that would normally put them out of their exemption and then maybe get assessed. But I'm saying since we're not collecting money on those, we may be able to be a little bit more flexible and possibly say maybe it's a rule change. I don't know if it's a rule change or legislation that we would put out there that would keep those in the exemption category as long as they're providing what I would consider true affordable housing to try to meet that need and demand that's in the state, right? As an example.
Chair,
If that, hopefully that narrows it down a little bit for you.
That definitely narrows it down, and it definitely narrows it down, and I'm going to be one of those that this is an area that I don't have a lot of knowledge on.
Surprisingly, you usually have quite a bit on everything else.
Yeah, exactly. So at the controller's office, we do have a housing deputy, and this is something that he works on a lot, and just so I stay out of his sandbox. But it's worth taking a look at as it relates to our roles and responsibility. And I must admit that yes, if they're repurposing some land that was once owned by a city or the government or a school that was naturally exempt from property tax based on the ownership, I just think as they move forward, I'm assuming that they're going to be selling that land to a nonprofit, and that nonprofit will get the exemption. But that's just an assumption because, again, I'm not tracking that legislation. So I guess what I'm really just saying, as long as we keep it controlled, I support what you're saying as far as a policy hearing to have a discussion, and it'll force me to do a little bit more homework. I do question the May date because we got something really important coming up in May. So I just don't think it'll be fair, because from my understanding, when it comes to public policy hearing, that workload shifts to the ED and her staff. If the workload is shifting to them, I can't support a May public policy hearing. I'm not really even sure if I can support June, because I'm not sure if they will have the time to get things ready, considering they're really busy with value setting for May. That's my only concern.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And I would defer that to our executive director to see if either one of those works, and if she recommends another month after. I see a hand from Member Gaines. Go ahead, Member Gaines.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Vasquez. I appreciate the comments by Member Stowers, and I think she's right on. We've got to be careful. There's a nexus in terms of our authority with AB 102. So I just really wanted to echo what she's saying, but I think you're on track, Chair Vasquez, in terms of our authority as it relates to the taxation of certain types of property or exemption of it. So I think if we stay in that lane, and of course, I'm sure our executive director will be examining that too, along with our legal counsel. So thank you.
Thank you. And you know what? Let me ask our executive director, member, Ms. Flemings, if you could just give us your input or your take. Is May a little too aggressive, or should we go wait until June or later?
We would appreciate it if the board would be so generous to us, because of we've got some heavy lifting for the May meeting that we're engaged in. So I'm just talking to staff now about a time frame that would give us more time. And then if we could do it, if we could, and circle back as a part of the details, but if we could look at something in the third quarter, that would be helpful. And perhaps what I could do, if the board would approve, I can accept the assignment and then maybe hold on offering a specific time frame at this point. That gives me a little bit more time working with staff to flesh out a little bit more of the detail, and then we could come back and then get a narrower, more defined proposed time frame. But I was thinking sometime in third quarter might be acceptable. I just don't have a specific month or board meeting date in mind. Would you be open to allowing me to have 30 days to come back with a recommendation on a timeline on that aspect of this proposal?
Sure. I was going to move the motion and then leave it open that you and I could regroup and see what makes sense in terms of, one, your workload and just the timing of it, if that's appropriate.
That would be helpful, and then but to commit now until we get this fleshed out a bit more with more discussion, a little bit more detail. That would be helpful, just to have that another 30 days for us to discuss it with you a little bit more and come back, and we can come back with it perhaps as an L2 item, as a continuing item at the next month's meeting for updates, if that could be included as a part of the motion.
Sure. Well, with that, let me put it out there that I would like to move the approval in concept conducting this public policy hearing regarding current and proposed affordable housing efforts, including but not limited to statutory changes and affordable housing advocate initiatives to increase affordable housing in the state for the development of policies to support and assist in these efforts. And rather than to put any date on it, I would say that I will work with the executive director and we'll come back to you within, I guess, our next meeting, 30 days, with more specific and a game plan and a date if you all approve it.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been seconded by Member Gaines.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
And I know Ms. Stowers has a question. Go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
Just want to make sure I understand, because you said approving concept, the public policy, but then come back to us with more detail, maybe at the next meeting. So when you're coming back to us at the next meeting, I think it would still be an L2 item. I mean, yeah, so,
Exactly.
so L1 is first introduced, L2 is further discussion, so,
Yes.
okay.
And listening to the executive director, that's what she's kind of recommending, and I think it makes sense.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
and thank you for that. Yeah, this is Executive Director Fleming. So that's what I recommend. L1, as you've stated, is the first time something's introduced. So we would bring this back as an L2 with a more refined proposal with a little bit more detail. That would give us the additional data needed to make a better determination of the time frame for a potential public policy hearing. And that way, and that would anticipate it to be in the third quarter of 2021.
Thank you.
Makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to me now.
Is that a little,
that's
a little more clear than Ms. Flowers?
Mine, that's perfect. What some things that I would text, yeah, more lead work, more analysis as an L2 item will really help me understand what we're looking at, and we're not biting off more than we can chew. So thank you.
Understood. Thank you. With that, seeing no other hands or comments, Mr. Najo, is that pretty clear, the motion, or do we need to restate it?
I think that's fine. Excuse me, Chairman Vasquez, honorable members of the board, Henry Nanjo, Chief Counsel. I think that's fine, especially since it's coming back as an L2 item. It's going to be something that we'll collaborate on and work up.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Taylor, can we just take a vote on that? Oh, do we need to ask if there's any public comment on that?
Yes, I believe we do.
Okay.
AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there's anyone who wants to make a public comment on this item? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, we request the callers provide their name.
Okay, once again, if you'd like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. We do have one in queue. It comes from the line of Malcolm Bain. Please go ahead, your line is open. Looks like they just removed themselves, so we'll give it one more moment. Okay, one moment. Malcolm Bain, your line is open.
Hi, I'm glad to see you folks so jovial. My father died last Monday. I took care of him for 3 years. He was infirm. We couldn't get him around. It was very unfortunate. Now I've had a week to breathe, and I started looking up taxes on the house and such, and find that I'm probably going to lose the family home. We were locked in by COVID. It's almost this Prop 19 thing blew through in almost what could be called the dark of the night. While you kept us all trapped under lock and key, you shut down your offices. How is it that you think that this isn't something that shouldn't be addressed? We didn't have time. We, the little people, did not have time to adjust. What are you going to do about it? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And just for you and anybody that's listening, our offices are still open. I mean, it's very limited, but they are open. And from what I understand, I think all our district offices have lines available for those that are calling. And if you don't catch a live person, there's definitely a recording. And I know in our office, we're doing a pretty good job of returning those calls, and I'm sure the other members are doing the same. And it's my understanding that even the state office at the BOE has folks there. It may be difficult to talk to somebody in person, but I know you can definitely have a phone conversation with folks.
Mr. Chair, may I also direct a comment to the public commenter?
Yes, Member Cohen, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to acknowledge the public commenters, his comments, and affirm that we can hear the grief in your voice. I'm very sorry for the loss of your father. And as you continue to process the loss of your father and you process your family's estate, property, the Board of Equalization is here to help, is here to offer any kind of clarifying questions that you may ask. I also just want to bring to your attention that, unfortunately, this body did not put Prop 19 on the ballot. We didn't vote for it. Members of the legislature did, the Assembly and the Senate. And that's a really important distinction. We have been agnostic. We didn't take a public position for or against Prop 19, but our job is to implement it in a fair way. That's why you hear so much conversation around the transparency of it. And we recognize the fact that this is a major sweeping piece of legislation that has totally changed the landscape of property tax and transfer of property. And to the commenter, you are not alone. There are many families that are grappling with the harsh reality of what this legislation has done. And this legislation was put to voters, and the voters passed it. And so our job is to implement it and to, as I said, be as transparent and open as possible. So to the commenter, if you have questions, if you need anything, we have staff members that will devote their time and their knowledge of how to best assist you, how best to guide you. If you are displeased with the passage of Prop 19, you should most certainly let your elected representative know, both on the Senate and the Assembly aside. They should know what the legislation, how it has impacted your family personally. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you. No, those are right on points. And yes, that goes to all those in the public that may be listening. With that, if there's nobody else is in the queue, right, Ms. Taylor?
I believe that was our only public comment on this item.
Okay. Then if you can please call the roll on the motion, Ms. Taylor?
Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you all, members, on that. And with that, let me have Ms. Taylor please call the next item.
The next item is M1, Public Policy Hearings, discussion on the implementation of Proposition 19, the Home Protection for Seniors, Severely Disabled, Families and Victims of Wildfire or Natural Disasters Act of 2020. This matter will be presented by Chairman Vasquez.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Members, consistent with our decision several months ago, we reserved the M1 item on every agenda to engage in discussion of Prop 19 issues and concerns. As we move into this next phase of implementation, we encourage residents and officials in all districts and throughout the state to bring forward any issues that will need attention or further policy development. This is an opportunity, as well as taxpayers and the public's, to provide input, information, and even possible proposals that may help with the fair implementation of Prop 19. We also want the public to be aware that 2 important rules implementing Prop 19 are posted on the BOE's Prop 19 website page, and that their input and questions are invited. LTA number 2021.010 states that the new intergenerational parent-to-child exclusion rule and LTA number 2021/010 011 states that the new base year value transfer rule is there. Members, do we have any comments or opening remarks on this as we move forward with this new item now? Seeing no hands or comments, Ms. Taylor, do we have any assessors in the queue or members in the public that want to weigh in on this?
Yes, I believe there are some members of the public that would like to weigh in.
Sure.
AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter or on the previous item L1B? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, we request that the callers provide their names.
And once again, please press 1, then 0 if you'd like to make a comment. And we do have one in queue. It comes from the line of Genevieve Coverell. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Yes, good afternoon. You know that's a violation of the Brown Act to ask for people to give their name. You know, it is not required. You cannot ask anybody to give their name. And today I have listened to your board since this morning early on, and every time you mention that. And that's not a good, me, I don't care. But a lot of people will not speak if they have to provide with their name. And like I said, that's a violation of the Brown Act. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Mr. Nanjo, if you're there, I'm not aware of that being a violation of the Brown Act, but I could be wrong.
Chairman Vasquez, thank you. Henry Nanjo, Chief Counsel. As I've previously advised the board, under, and the caller was referring to the Brown Act, which is similar to Bagley-Keene, the Bagley-Keene Act, which applies to our public hearings. Under Bagley-Keene, we cannot require or make as a condition of a public commenter speaking that they state their name. I think Ms. Taylor is very careful to say we're requesting that they state the name for the record, but if a caller declines to give their name, they would still be allowed to speak. And so in that respect, the last caller has a little bit of merit to her comments.
Thank you. So I guess the key is we requested. We don't. It's not a mandate at this point. Then okay, that's good to put out there. Ms. Taylor, was there anybody else in the queue?
AT&T operator, is there anyone else in the queue?
At this time, we have no further in queue.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Schaefer here.
Vice Chair Schaefer, go ahead.
I would like to have the name so that I can thank them, recognize the wisdom of their presentation and the good that so many of the members of the public do. And we're deprived of that. And so I agree with you fully that it's something we can request without requiring. And if somebody wants to remain anonymous, then I won't know how to thank them. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, members, I wanted to, just thank you again. And we encourage everyone to review Rule 462.520 on the intergenerational transfers. That is attached to the LTA number 2021-010, as well as the proposed Rule 462.540 that is also posted on our Prop 19 website in the LTA number 2021/12. We really look forward to your comments and concerns as we try to clarify and define the impacts of transferring a family home or family farm and transferring a homeowner's base year value throughout the state. If there's no further comments from anyone, And I see, is Member Gaines, do you have a hand up?
Yes, now,
Member Gaines.
are we on item N? I wanted to speak
Not,
under.
not yet.
Okay, so
Not
I'll hold off.
Okay. With that, I just wanted, if there was no other further comments from anyone, we would close the public, well, actually, Ms. Taylor, yeah, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And Ms. Taylor, would you please call the next item?
The next item is N, public comment on matters not on the agenda. Persons who wish to address the Board of Equalization regarding items not on the agenda. Please note that the board cannot take action on items not on the agenda. However, the board can schedule issues raised by the public for consideration at a future meeting.
Thank you. Is Member Gaines, is this what did you want to talk on N?
Yeah, I just, if it's appropriate, I just wanted to make an announcement. Could I do that in this portion, or should I wait?
Did you want to wait until the end of the meeting, or is it something you want to include now?
I could do it wherever it's appropriate. It's just a personal announcement.
Oh, okay. Why don't we do it at closing? This way, it sounds
That's
like it's
fine.
something we could end on. All right. Let me ask Ms. Taylor if there's anybody in the queue that wishes to speak on our public comment matters.
Yes, there is. I should also note that board proceedings received, distributed, and posted to our website a written public comment from Matthew Powers, Vice President of Life Disability and LTC Policy from the Association of California Life and Health Insurance Companies regarding opposition to CDI, structured settlements, gross premiums, tax assessment. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter? Each caller will have up to 3 minutes to speak. For the record, we request that the callers provide their name.
Okay, once again, it is 1 then 0 if you'd like to make a comment. We do have a follow-up comment from the line of Genevieve Coverill. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Yes, I want to speak for items for another meeting. Not, I don't know how comes the franchise tax board can decide how many years they can go after a taxpayer who have not paid a tax. For most of the agency, it's 7 years. But the franchise tax board decide to increase that time to anything they want to. And initially with 7, then it's 15 years, and now it's as long as they want to. And that really concerned me that they can go back to a tax date of 2003 and still try to collect. And what concerned me is that they can decide of the length of time. And I just want to know if anything the Board of Equalization can look at that issue, because technically you oversee the franchise tax board. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Was there anybody else in the queue, Ms. Taylor?
Yes, I believe there's another caller in the queue. AT&T, is there another speaker in the?
Once again, if you do or wish to make a comment, please press 1 then 0. Right now, I'm showing no further in queue.
Thank you. And for the member that spoke on the Franchise Tax Board, we as the BOE don't oversee the Franchise Tax Board, but myself as the chair of the board, I do get to sit on the Franchise Tax Board. And for the young lady that spoke earlier, if you would please just reach out to our office and let us know of your concern, I could definitely raise that issue before the Franchise Tax Board. Thank you for your comment. And with that, Ms. Taylor, if you'd please call the next item.
Our next item is O, closed session pending litigation. Number 1, La Paloma Generating Company versus California Board of Equalization, Kern County et al., Los Angeles County Superior Court. 2, Verizon California Incorporated versus California State Board of Equalization, Court of Appeal, 3rd Appellate District. 3, Michael D. Myers versus State Board of Equalization et al., Court of Appeal, 2nd Appellate District. 4, AT&T Mobility LLC et al. Versus County of Riverside et al., Riverside County Superior Court. 5, AT&T Mobility LLC et al. Versus County of Santa Clara et al., Santa Clara County Superior Court. 6, Sprint Communications Company LP versus County of Santa Clara et al., Santa Clara County Superior Court. 7, T-Mobile West LLC versus County of Santa Clara et al., Santa Clara County Superior Court. 8, AT&T Mobility LC et al. Versus County of San Diego et al., San Diego County Superior Court. 9, David W. Swanson et al. Versus Franchise Tax Board and the State Board of Equalization, San Diego County Superior Court. The board members will now go into closed session to discuss pending litigation matters.
Thank you.
I think we're missing the chair.
Yep, I was in it.
Yeah, right, and then,
Yeah, I think it sounds better, right?
yeah. That way you adjourn.
Are we all back?
We're
Yes,
ready for
we
you
are
to
all
proceed,
back.
sir. Board Proceedings has made the announcement regarding the closed session, and we're ready to open the public meeting.
All right. With that, we're reconvening from closed session. And if I could just ask staff to report out what was discussed in closed session, and then we'll resume the meeting. We'll get back to our agenda.
Vice Chair, what was discussed in closed session should remain closed.
I'm sorry, you're right. I'm just saying, but don't, were you supposed to have a report out that basically there was no decisions made, right? For the public, right?
That is correct. It was
Okay.
merely a discussion.
Yes. Do we need to say anything more than that, Ms. Fleming, or is that, or I guess Mr. Nanja?
Nope, that was perfect. Thank you very much, Chairman Vasquez.
Thank you all. And now as we get ready to adjourn our meeting, I wanted to, before we officially adjourn, make one quick announcement, and that was a belated happy birthday to Member Gaines. I understand he turned a big 3-0 this last weekend. Is that correct?
Yeah, double that plus a couple. But, yeah.
Well, you look a lot younger than that.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And but the more exciting information from our family is that Beth and I are proud to announce our first grandson. So Banks DeAngelis is our first grandson. He's born April 2nd, and he was, I think, 10 pounds and a couple ounces. He was a big baby, and he's the first grandchild of 4 that will be delivered this year. So our 4 oldest daughters are all pregnant, and we're, well, excuse me, I should say 3 at this point, because we've had 1 delivery, but we're very excited about that, and it brings a little hope and joy to certainly our family, and hopefully anybody we can share it with, that we're going to have a great 2021.
Thank you, and welcome to the club. You know, I have a 6-year-old grandson.
Awesome. That's great.
They're a ball of energy.
Vice Chair Schaefer here.
Yes, Vice Chair Schaefer, go ahead.
I learned from Bill Cosby decades ago that grandparents are the most wonderful people in the world, according to grandchildren. They are so much nicer than mom and dad.
That is so true. We spoil them. Any other announcements before we officially adjourn? Oh, member Stowers, I see your hand.
Thank you very much. I also want to say happy birthday to that young man, Mr. Gaines, Member Gaines. It's a pleasure working with you and your family. I'm sorry, you and your team. And may God continue to bless you and your family.
Oh, thank you so much, Yvette. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Vice Chair Schaefer, again, I do have a adjournment. We had a death in our district of a very prominent person I want to speak to.
Sure. I have one as well. So you want to go ahead? Why don't you go ahead?
Yes. The Los Angeles Times carried a story this week on a man with a very common name, Bob Johnson, who was a very uncommon civil rights leader. He was a native of Chicago that moved to Glendale and then to Orange County, and he passed at age 88. And what's so remarkable about him is that he wrote a book called A Different Shade of Orange, which was a collection of voices of Orange County Black pioneers. It seems that back when Los Angeles County and Orange County were the same, they split up with legislation from an assembly member named Henry Head. And Assemblyman Head was one of the founding members of the Ku Klux Klan under a Confederate general. And the Black population of Orange County has been 2.1%, which is the only major population area in the United States under 5%. Mr. Johnson died of Parkinson's disease, leaving behind a wife of 65 years. And I'm just so proud that this Orange County resident did so much over the years to assist Black people, Vietnamese people, Latino people, any minority group that was not being fairly recognized got the undivided attention of Bob Johnson. And after 88 productive years, he went to the Lord, and I think the board, we're all for fair and equity in all business and all people, and I salute him. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other adjournments and memories of any other folks that people might have? If not, I would like to end or adjourn our meeting today. I would like to adjourn our meeting in memory of our longtime board equalization employee, passed away on April the 3rd. Martin Roque, I believe this is the pronunciation, and Marty, as a friend called him, Roque, I'm saying. Martin was born in Woodland, California, to Martin and Rosa Roque on December 6, 1928. He graduated from McClatchy High School and studied drafting at Sacramento Junior College. After college, he went to work as a mapper for the State Board of Equalization, eventually becoming the supervisor of the Tax Area Service Section. Martin retired after 35 years with the BOE. Martin was an amateur astronomer avid photographer, and skilled woodworker. He was an active member of the Sacramento Valley Astronomical Society for many years. In his retirement, he made many wood projects, including wall and processional crosses for local churches, inlaid wood jewelry and jewelry boxes, toy vehicles for the Shriners Children Hospital and Sacramento County Children's Home, model trucks, and many other projects for family and friends. Martin is survived by his wife of 64 years, Pearl, daughter Glenna, who followed in her father's footsteps to work in property tax at the BOE, son-in-law Tom, and grandchildren Curtis and Christine. Martin will be sorely missed by his friends and family, and we adjourn in his memory and honor his valued service to the state. And with that, I'd like to just officially adjourn our meeting today, and I have 3:02 to be exact, and we will adjourn this meeting. Oh, I'm sorry.
Chairman
Ms. Fleming,
Vasquez,
did you have
this is
something?
Brenda Fleming. If I could just make one comment. On behalf of the Board of Equalization and members, thank you so much. And on behalf of the agency staff, we want to join this board in sending our love and support and condolences to Glenna, who's a longstanding member of our team, very close to all of us. So on a personal level, we just be officially a part of making that acknowledgement and adjourning in her memory, her dad's memory. So very much appreciated. Secondly, if I may, Chair, just to comment on the great work that you're doing as a board. Just really appreciate all of the things that you're doing to provide leadership in so many different areas and helping to move this organization forward. So your leadership is greatly appreciated. So it's my pleasure. Thank you.
No, thank you. And, I also wanted to chime in and thank you, not only you, but your staff for your dedicated service, especially, as we're dealing with here we got a perfect storm. We're dealing with COVID-19 still. And on top of it, we had this Proposition 19, which I know added extra work that we weren't anticipating at the outset of this year. So wanted to extend my gratitude and thank you to the staff as well for your extra work and service on that.
Chair Vasquez.
Yeah, Vice Chair Schaefer, go ahead.
Also, I think this is a record in our history of the board of not more than 5 minutes break all day long.
You're right. And thank you to the members for putting up with me and not taking a break. I know you probably were waiting, when are we going to take a break? But I think we went through it pretty smooth, and thank you for your patience with that. But with that, now it is 3:04. We will officially adjourn this meeting, and we will reconvene on May the 25th and 26th possibly, but definitely May 25th of 2021. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day and the weekend to come. See you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, members, and thank you, staff.
Thank you all.